discussion forward then and understand a little bit more about Paytm, the poster child of the digital payment story, how it ended up in this space, what role the regulator could have played better or the company could have adopted in terms of its rules and regulations from day one, and more importantly, what the road ahead lies. Is it going to be Paytm still, Karo? Let's have Mr. Sandeep Parekh, he's Securities Lawyer, joining in, as well as Ashvin Parekh, Managing Partner at Ashvin Parekh Advisory Services. Thank you both, gentlemen, for taking time out. Sandeep, I'm going to begin with you. Clearly, the regulator has come on board, and now they've gotten quite a crackdown on Paytm. Given that they have come and taken action against some of the other financial entities in the past, this one has some sort of a finality to it. Your views?
So I think, much of what we know is really contained in that one page or 1.5 page order of RBI. And rest is, I think the details of why they've done the actions seems to be kind of coming from sources within RBI. So we don't really have a definitive perspective on why this kind of a more than harsh action has been taken against Paytm. So, it's right now, the basis of why they've done it seems to be based on these sources. But, assuming those sources to be accurate, I would say, they're essentially looking at, number one, I think the chronicity, which means, multiple years of non-compliance with RBI norms, in particularly with relation to KYC and, money laundering, etc. And those are, as you can imagine, are seen very severely by the central bank. We've not seen an action like this where they've essentially shut down the bank till further notice. So I think there must be something pretty serious for them to take an action like this. But at the same time, since official data is not available of why they've taken that action, it's kind of difficult to, look at proportionality, whether it is fair enough, whether, what they've done is in line with, the offense that is, the nature of the violation.
Right, and Ashwin, I want to just take that point across to you as well, because it seems that, to describe Paytm's situation as a corporate governance issue, which typically involves managements taking advantage of minority shareholders or defaulting them, do you think it would be a little bit excessive to describe this as that, or it's justified?
Well, okay, let's look at it this way. You see, between, let's say, non-performance and non-compliance, non-compliance has to be viewed more seriously. And that's clearly a matter of governance, because if the regulator, after the inspection, gave warnings to the bank, particularly in regard KYC and other matters, then, it was very much up to the audit committee of the bank and also the board members of the bank to really take it up and ensure that there was a complete compliance. Now, the trouble with KYC and weakness in KYC is that it can go back. In the sense, till you completed KYC, and as a bank, there's a much larger responsibility on you, because what you're doing is you're not only opening up your system with a weaker KYC, but you're making the banking system itself vulnerable. Things can get into. Money laundering is one aspect. What is not talked about yet is something that could also lead to cybersecurity also, because if you are weak in your KYC, you admitted someone, and then he's conducted unusual transactions. In addition, he could have also passed on malware into your system, basically. So, I would say the governance aspect comes in because the compliance had to be really completely examined by the board and also the management. The boards of the management also, the committees of the management, very closely, because non-compliance in banking must be taken up very seriously.
Right, Ashwin, given that Paytm has come across, they have acknowledged this RBI directive, they've come out with clarifications. Legally, is there any course of action that they can take?
Well, legally, I won't say there is very little, quite honestly, because, one has to accept the fact that the regulator wouldn't have taken the approach that it has taken without the evidence that was available to the regulator on one side, and then without understanding the consequences on the entire banking system. So here we're not talking about one unit, we're talking about the entire banking system. And I suppose no, I mean, to my mind, I may be very wrong, but to my mind, it would be very difficult for any judicial sort of, body to sustain an argument to say that, if they were non-compliant, they will make sure that they are compliant now. And the period over which they've been non-compliant has also been a long one. So I suspect that there may be very little that may be available, but then of course it's a matter of detail. And I mean, I am not really an expert in this area, but I would say in the normal course, if the regulator puts up such a, let's say, order, then it is very difficult to defy it or to take it to the courts.
Sandeep, the same question to you in terms of what course of action in terms of a legal frame would be best for Paytm at this juncture?
So not much, to be honest. I think we can file a writ saying that, this is action is not proportionate to, what offense. But again, like I said, sitting here is kind of more shadow boxing because we don't know the basis on which RBI passed that order. So if it's kind of hugely disproportionate, maybe they can file a writ. But unlike the SEBI system where there's an appellate process, there's no such process available to Paytm. So really, all they can do is file a writ, and as you know, writ the nature of a challenge is very limited as opposed to an appeal in SAT, which exists for all of the regulators, all of the financial regulators, but doesn't exist for RBI. So essentially, if they feel very strongly and they have a good case and facts, then they can file a writ. But otherwise, they just have to fall in line, make all the compliances, and then essentially ask RBI to reconsider its decision, saying that we've done all these remedial actions, we've made sure that our systems work a lot better than they used to work earlier. And therefore, please allow us to restart our operations. That's the more likely scenario.
So, Ashwin, I think the big question is now what's next for Paytm and its bank?
Well, to begin with, I suppose, whatever is the order, they have to comply with that, which means they've got enough time. In fact, perhaps the regulators consider the fact that the number of both transactions and the number of customers that the bank has, they are large enough, and therefore a 60-day period has already been given, during which all the bank accounts can be moved to the other banks. And also, the linkage with the other banks and all can be, once again, the payment gateway will have to be transferred back to those banks who will work with them. So already 3 or 4 banks work with Paytm. So, I mean, a large number of customers can move on to those, but it's open. I mean, today it's any other bank can acquire, those customers, and thereafter the customers are completely sort of, freed from any problem thereafter. To the extent they have their monies in the bank account, the wallet account, in the bank, and then that can only be up to 1 lakh of rupees. They can utilize that till 29th of February, after which if there is any balance left, or during which there is any balance left, then they can move it to any other bank thereafter.